Mary had a little lamb.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
It's Friday, you bastards.
We're going to use our best people.
I'm going to get the best people.
We're going to deliver. We're going to get the best people in the world.
We don't want people that are B level, C level, D level. We have to get our absolute best.
Well, I think it's time to see how that's working out. And folks, important to remember, this is not a complete list. We've got Michael Cohen, president's former fixer, yesterday pleading guilty to tax evasion, lying to a bank, and campaign finance violations, which included paying off 2 women to influence an election, directly implicating President Trump in both payments. Now, Paul Manafort, Trump's former campaign chairman, yesterday found guilty of tax fraud, hiding foreign bank accounts, and bank fraud. We've got Michael Flynn, former national security advisor, pled guilty to lying to the FBI about his contacts with the Russian ambassador. George Papadopoulos, former senior policy advisor to the campaign, pled guilty to lying to the FBI. His conversation with an Australian diplomat about Russian dirt on Hillary Clinton, that's what started the Russian investigation. And folks, these are just the convicts. Then there are the people who've left the administration under, shall we say, a cloud. Former EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt, forced out in the wake of 14 ongoing investigations while torching taxpayer money on everything from first-class travel to his $40,000 secure phone booth. Don't we all wish we had one? Tom Price, former HHS secretary, forced out after $300,000 in taxpayer-provided charter flights. Chief strategist Steve Bannon, Breitbart firebrand and architect of Trump's nationalist agenda, fired after undermining the president on several fronts and speaking ill of the family. Omarosa Malnigat-Newman, fired by Chief of Staff John Kelly for alleged ethical lapses, which we know about because she took the unprecedented step of secretly recording it inside this White House situation. Now, most Americans do not believe President Trump hires only the best people. In fact, 58% don't believe he hires only the best, according to a Monmouth University poll. Now, with all the White House turmoil and turnover, we shouldn't lose focus on the fact that yesterday's near simultaneous convictions of the president's former campaign chairman and personal lawyer is unprecedented. And the way we know this is to compare the Trump presidency with past administrations. Spoiler alert, it doesn't look too good. For example, within the first 18 months, 4 members of the Trump campaign or administration have been indicted or pled guilty. Over 8 years, the Obama administration had 1, David Petraeus, and it was a misdemeanor. Finally, campaign finance experts say that thanks to Cohen naming him, President Trump could be considered an unindicted co-conspirator in Cohen's crime. The last time a sitting president held that title was Richard Nixon.
Sweet Jesus.
Oh, sweet Jesus. Oh, my God. And that was just Wednesday. Oh, happy Friday, you bastards. Happy Friday. Here you go.
He knows where the money is. One of the oldest rules of law enforcement is follow the money, and CFOs are often very, very important witnesses, not because they have done anything wrong, but they know where the money comes in and where it goes out. And the fact that he has now been granted immunity is enormously significant because it means investigators now have a basically complete window into the financial operations of the Trump organization. Now, if there is nothing improper that went on there, Donald Trump has nothing to worry about. But if there is something improper, the feds are very likely going to know about it.
Oh, my God.
They just granted immunity to the chief financial officer, Breaking Bad Heisenberg, or Weisselberg, or Weisselman, whatever. Right? Right? Didn't we do a whole show about him? Didn't we do a whole show? If you're looking for it, it was called Breaking Bad. That was the name of the podcast that day. Oh, my God. So here you've got Flynn, Cohen, Omarosa, George Papadopoulos. You've got Weisselberg or Heisenberg. You've got David Pecker from the National Enquirer getting immunity. Dylan Howard, who's the chief content officer for the Enquirer. How many people are taking, flipping, as the president said? No flipping. Wasn't that Gary Shandling? Yes, the Gary Shandling show. No flipping. It's unbelievable. This is just unbelievable.
Alan Weisselberg, the longtime CFO of the Trump Organization, has also been granted immunity by prosecutors. The Wall Street Journal is citing people familiar with the matter, saying that he was granted immunity by prosecutors for providing information about Cohen into the criminal investigation into these hush money payments, the story that we're talking about here. The Wall Street Journal is also talking about how previously, as they reported, Weisselberg testified before a federal grand jury in this. Now, explain for a second. We know who Alan Weisselberg is. We have it up on the screen here. He is a guy who knows all the dirt, right? This is a guy who knows everything about this organization. You are shaking your head. What do you make of this?
It's a huge news. It depends on what they have granted him immunity to talk about, whether it's just Cohen or other things related to Trump. I talked earlier about how the Trump Organization didn't really have internal boundaries in terms of, the different parts of the empire. And part of that was that Alan Weisselberg was basically the money man for all of it. Right. For Trump's personal expenses, for some campaign expenses, for Trump's charity, for Trump's business. Anytime Donald Trump wanted to write a check, Alan Weisselberg knew about it. Alan Weisselberg signed off on it. So the whole finances of the Trump Organization, which Donald Trump spent a lot of time trying to keep secret from anybody else, both reporters and from regulators, Alan Weisselberg knows all of that. And I don't think he really often played a role in sort of pushing back and saying, hey, don't do that. The law says we can't do this or that. He seems to, from previous testimony we've seen from him, he seems to have just said, yes, I'll do it. You're the boss. I'll do it. For him to say, to take a grant of immunity, it signals that that the feds have somebody who knows everything that happened within Donald Trump's company going back to the early 90s and maybe even before.
Oh, you mean when he first started laundering money for Russia and even before? Wow, that's a long time back.
We do know from this journal reporting, Jeffrey, that he was called to testify before a federal grand jury. Just set this in the context of the week for us. This is a week where Michael Cohen pled guilty, flipped on the president. David Pecker got immunity for on the president, and now this. How significant, Jeff?
Well, what makes it so important is that the investigators are trying to tell the whole story of what went on here. Michael Cohen has admitted that he was participated in illegal campaign finance activities, as he said, at the direction of the president. But what did he do exactly? And who did he do it with? Were other people involved? Certainly Alan Weisselberg, who, as you point out, is mentioned on that tape, is someone who might know something about this. David Pecker received some of this money in his role as chief executive of American Media. That's the other side of the transaction. Are there other transactions? The feds are doing what feds do, which is find someone who did wrongdoing, flip him, and then use him to determine if there's other wrongdoing to be found. It's certainly very unnerving to be on the receiving end of that kind of scrutiny.
And they never would have been on the receiving end of that kind of scrutiny had Donald Trump, A, run an honest business, B, not laundered money for the Russians beginning in the early 90s, C, not be all mobbed up before that when he was building things, D, didn't lie about it during a campaign, E, didn't buy off and pay off women. I mean, it's what a story this is. It's so amazing. It's truly, truly, truly amazing. And the reason why Weisselberg or Heisenberg or the Breaking Bad dude is so key to all this is because he's been working for the Trump Organization, writing checks, laundering money, finding ways to, explain money coming in and anonymous buyers and buildings and management agreements and Felix Sater's salary and all this stuff since Fred Trump was in charge of the Trump Organization. That's how long ago this story starts. And that's why the story seems so complicated. And it really isn't. This is a story about a family who actually had some politicians in their pocket and skirted the law from the very inception of their building housing in Queens. Okay? And then the son, at about 28 years old, Donald Trump, decided he wanted to go into Manhattan. And when he went into Manhattan, he came across, all of the obstacles that any builder in Manhattan would have come across. Except instead of doing it honestly, he decided to cave. He decided he would throw in with the Sammy the Bulls. He would throw in with the John Gottis. He would, if they wanted cement poured, he would pay them. And Weisselberg would, launder the money. You want to see some of, here's a blast from the past. This is what Scotty found. This is amazing. This is an amazing little piece of video. I would urge everyone who is the producer for various news shows tonight, take this piece of tape. This is Sammy the Bull Gravano talking to, this is what, 1997? Talking to Diane Sawyer, who still looks wonderful, I must say. She held up, right? But here is Sammy the Bull Gravano, waxing poetic about every time he looks at the New York skyline. What does he think of every time?
The Presidential Committee's report estimated in 1988 that the mob took in $30 billion a year in tax-free money. The report says the 5 families in New York jack up the prices on construction by 20%. At the center of this, Sammy Gravano, who ran construction and concrete for the Gambino crime family.
I literally marvel at the sight of Manhattan when I see it because I controlled it. I literally controlled Manhattan. When I see it at night, those lights and everything about it, I think of Donald Trump and Tishman and everybody else who couldn't build a building if I didn't want them to build it. That got me off. Plus, I made a lot of money with it.
What? The first name that trips off Sammy the Bull Gravano's tongue is Donald Trump. Yeah. Isn't that something? And of course, here's my working theory, is that Donald Trump, did build things back in the day. And he was all mobbed up. Roy Cohn, who was the lawyer for 2 of the 5 families, the heads of the 2, there were 5 crime families, and Roy Cohn was the attorney representing 2 of those 5 families. And that was also Donald Trump's lawyer, Roy Cohn. Where's my Roy Cohn? He said that recently, right? And so when Donald Trump saw in the late 80s, the early 90s, that there was another business to be had away from the construction part of it that was easier. And that was the money laundering from Russia, because Russia was still the Soviet Union in the late 80s. Russia didn't fall till 1991. And all this flight capital, all this money was looking to fly, out of Russia and into safe places. And Donald Trump caught on really early that what he should do is stop building things, because Trump Tower was built, 1987? That's the last thing he built. And just slap his name on crap and sell that crap to anonymous buyers who were looking to get their money out of Russia. And just sell them apartments and then collect management fees on the back end, which he had learned from the mob. And that is what Donald Trump's business has been. The only other time he tried to build something, he tried to get into the most mobbed up business there is in New Jersey, of all places. And that was, the casino business. And he failed miserably, but not before he was fined over and over and over again for money laundering in the casinos.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
I went back to the beginning, and Donald Trump has said he had 0 contacts with Russia. I think he was off by at least 59 people. And that's how many people I found who were intermediaries between him and Russia going back to the 80s. And it started off, this is really a great intelligence operation. And it started off as a money laundering operation in 1984 when a man with the Russian mafia met with Donald Trump in Trump Towers. It was this newly glitzy building. And he just came in with $6 million and said, I'll buy 5 condos. That's the equivalent of $15 million today. That event was typical of at least 1,300 such purchases of Trump properties in that they were all cash and they were bought by anonymous shell companies. And Trump has been doing this for many, many years. And if you look at it, he's completely indebted to Russia. They own him. He was $4 billion in debt at one point, $4 billion after his Atlantic City overexpansion, and the Russian mafia came to his aid.
So that's Craig Unger, and he's got a book called, what is it, Trump... House of Trump, House of Putin. And the reason why I always get confused is because he did another one about Bush called House of Bush, House of Sod. Okay. But this is Craig Unger's new book. And I hopefully he's our guest on Monday, which means news will break in the middle of that interview because, you know, it's just, it's Murphy's Law of me doing interviews. But let's just not go back that far. Okay. We could go back. I mean, Sammy the Bull Gravano. Sitting there telling Diane Sawyer when he looks at the skyline of Manhattan, he thinks about how nothing gets built if he doesn't want it built. And he thinks about Donald Trump and how if he didn't want Donald Trump to have anything, Donald Trump wouldn't have. I mean, come on. And then, of course, Donald Trump got really tired of dealing with the Italian mafia and decided it was much easier to deal with the Russian mafia over in Russia, who were trying to get money out of the Soviet Union when it was still the Soviet Union. And then in 1991, when the Soviet Union fell and this kleptocracy really, just went like speeding off of the rails, the money was really flying out. He's like, oh, this is some gravy train. And the gravy train just continued. It just continued. Let's talk about Felix Sater for a brief moment. Felix Sater, Russian-born, business associate of President Donald Trump. In 2015, there are emails between Michael Cohen and Felix Sater, who are childhood pals, friends, who grew up in Brooklyn together, met when they were like 13 years old, okay? So let's go back to an article that was in the New York Times written by Matt Apuzzo and Maggie Haberman in 2017, reporting on things that they had learned about Felix Sater and 2015. A business associate of President Trump promised in 2015 to engineer a real estate deal with the aid of the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, that he said would help Mr. Trump win the presidency. The associate, Felix Sater, wrote a series of emails to Mr. Trump's lawyer, Michael Cohen. So I'm doing this on purpose, okay? This is for all you sick people out there, all you Cult 45 members, all you really psychotic little bitches out there who melt like little snowflakes every time we connect the dots for you. I'm doing this so you can get out while the getting is good, okay? Because you're sitting there saying, Michael Cohen paying off the women has nothing to do with Russia. Where's the collusion? Where? I'm going to show it to you right freaking now by virtue of emails whose recollection does not change. The associate Felix Sater wrote a series of emails to Mr. Trump's lawyer, Michael Cohen, in which he boasted about his ties to Vladimir Putin. He predicted that building a Trump Tower in Moscow would highlight Mr. Trump's savvy negotiating skills and be a political boon to his candidacy. Here's the email, everybody. Quote, our boy can become president of the USA and we can engineer it. I will get all of Putin's team to buy in on this. I will manage this process. Felix Sater is an FBI informant. He's been an FBI informant. He probably was put in Trump Tower as an associate of Trump's by the FBI all these many years ago because of the Russian money laundering fines that Trump had to pay at the New Jersey casinos over and over again. Trump is fined by FinCEN, a small little group that works out of the Treasury Department, okay, that had fined Donald Trump for laundering money through his casinos. The Taj Mahal broke anti-money laundering rules in the 1990s. It was the preferred spot for Russian mobsters to gamble. Episodes like this are being scrutinized by Mueller. They were scrutinized, they were tried to be looked into by the House Democrats on the Intel Committee, the Senate Intel Committee. And the Republicans just sit there and they take this oath of omerta because Republicans have become mobs. They become like Russian mafia. The Taj Mahal Casino broke anti-money laundering rules 106 times in its first year and a half of operation in the early 90s, according to a 1998 settlement that Donald Trump entered into. It's a little bit of forgotten history. It's buried in the federal records, although it is available and became available when people filed FOIA requests. The casino repeatedly failed to properly report gamblers who cashed out $10,000 or more on a single day. The casino ended up paying the Treasury Department a $477,000 fine. This is in 1998. And, didn't cop to any liability, but did plead that they violated the Bank Secrecy Act. Who broke this story? CNN broke this story. CNN broke this story way back with a FOIA request. Freedom of Information Act request, okay? They got 417 pages of documents from the Treasury Department under the Freedom of Information Act, and the records included the 1998 settlement, the draft and the final copies of a similar settlement in 2015, and exchanges between the lawyers for Donald Trump and the federal regulators. The 1998 settlement was publicly reported at the time, and the Associated Press noted it was the largest fine and the federal government ever slapped on a casino for violating the Bank Secrecy Act. The thing is that we don't know who the people are because it's been redacted, even under the Freedom of Information Act request, right? You have the identities of the gamblers and the identities of the casino employees involved in these transactions. They're redacted. They're missing. So congressional committees now have asked the Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, or FinCEN, this little egg-shaped building, I told you that, operates within the Treasury Department, to provide any information that it has on Trump, his businesses, his top officials, and campaign aides. So here you have like Nunes in the House and Richard Burr in the Senate, not really being all that curious, okay? They don't really want to see the unredacted FinCEN reports because the unredacted FinCEN reports will include the details of the violations and potentially a whole lot more, and that it would show the whole global network of Trump's finances, and it would be able to determine whether FinCEN data shows connections between Trump associates and Russians. This is where Weisselberg comes in, okay? The statement that was put out back then by the Trump Organization is the Trump Organization has had no involvement with the Taj Mahal or any other Atlantic City property for over a decade and has no knowledge of the events referred to in your email, okay? Weisselberg was there when all this was going on, and this happened 10 years ago excuse is not going to play when he's under oath. But what it shows, all we got is 2 pages. That's all we got is the settlement agreement in 1998. It's just 2 pages. And all it shows is that the Taj Mahal failed to file currency transaction reports within the time period required. And it states that Trump's casino, which opened in April 1990, made the violations sometime before December 1991. And that's the settlement that settled 106 different times that it violated the Bank Secrecy Act. 106 times. That year, 1991, is when the Taj Mahal was actually in bankruptcy, and then it emerged from bankruptcy after all this Russian money was laundered through the Taj Mahal. And I guess they figure, oh, well, we'd rather pay the fine. And then Trump sold 50% of his stake in the Atlantic City casino. And then the Trump Castle Hotel Casino, according to a 1991 New Jersey gaming enforcement report, describes an incident that happened on December 18th, 1990, the very day that an interest payment was coming due for Trump. He owed, just in interest alone, on the loans that he had, $18.5 million on one interest payment. An attorney named Howard Snyder walked into the Castle Casino with a certified check for $3.35 million drawn from the bank account of Fred C. Trump. Snyder exchanged the check, gave the casino the $3.35 million, and walked away with 670 of the gray gambling chips, which he put into a case that equaled the $3.35 million. And then he just walked out of the casino and never cashed out the chips. That was how Fred Trump was laundering money through the casino to help his son pay just the interest on the loans that he eventually defaulted on. So the regulators, the gambling regulators in New Jersey, they charged Trump's casino under the state's Casino Control Act for not disclosing his father as a financial backer. And he paid a $30,000 civil penalty. You see, this is the thing. When guys like this, big money guys, politicians, when they break the law, they get fined. They get fined. If you break the law, you're going to jail. You're getting cuffed. You're going to plea because you're going to get some sort of a public defender with 90 other cases. Do you know what I'm saying? But these guys, civil penalties, civil fines for breaking money laundering. This is known to Mueller, okay? If I know it, are you telling me that the Republicans who are silent this week, silent, you haven't heard a peep from them? Everyone's getting pleading guilty or entering into plea agreements or signing immunity deals or disclosing, we had a safe, and in the safe we had all the catch and kill stories, and the National Enquirer was actually working as an arm of the Trump campaign to protect Trump and to blast out all these nasty stories, these fake stories on Hillary. I mean, it's just so sick. It's so sick. And Sammy the Bull Gravano, he's saying back in the 90s, if it wasn't for us, Trump couldn't build a building, and he had to do business with us. It got me off. I loved it. I loved holding up, for any building I didn't want built. You had to pay me. You want to build a building? F you, pay me. It's so sick. It's so sick. I can't even tell you. And what does Fox News cover during all of this breaking news? They're trying to say that a horrible murder, a horrific murder of a young girl who would never, ever, ever be a racist. I mean, according to her family is just, again, it's like the Seth Rich family. They used Seth Rich's murder to drown out other news, to make Hillary some sort of a murderer, right? She had Seth Rich killed because the whole idea that, Trump is a crook and that Trump was all mobbed up and that it was Russian mafia and that the government of Russia wrote emails saying that, we support your father and we're going to send a government lawyer to give you dirt on Hillary Clinton, just to drown it out. Oh, no, there was no hacking. There was no hacking. Well, Michael Cohen pled guilty to knowing about, payments and hacking and all these other things, okay? And there's a cooperation agreement that I suspect there is under seal where obviously Felix Sater, Michael Cohen, they have emails. Our boy can become president of the USA and we can engineer it. I will get all of Putin's team to buy in on this. I will manage this process. You think Michael Cohen was the recipient of that email from Felix Sater, who's been cooperating with the FBI for years now. For years. And what Sater was talking about is that he had lined up financing for the Trump Tower deal with a bank called VTB Bank, a Russian bank that was under sanctions by us. For what? For their invasion of Paul Manafort's Ukraine. Yes, it's all connected. Quote, I will get Putin on this program and we will get Donald elected, Mr. Sater wrote to Michael Cohen. He said, I'm eager to show them video clips of Mr. Trump speaking glowingly about Russia. I will arrange for Putin to praise Mr. Trump's business acumen. If he says we own this election, America's most difficult adversary agreeing that Donald Trump is a good guy.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
One is, I think a lot of the compromise is just hiding in plain sight. I mean, they bought him. They own him. He would not have had a successful business career. America's not going to elect someone who's $4 billion in debt. In addition, I interviewed General Oleg Kalugin, who was head of counterintelligence for the KGB. And when I talked about the Russian mafia, he said, oh, that's just another branch of the KGB. It's part of Russian intelligence. So consider this for a minute. You have all these Russian mobsters who are buying condos from him. Some of them are located in Trump Tower. This goes on and off for over 30 years. I documented it all in my book. And these are links to Russian intelligence in the home of the President of the United States. He would never get a security clearance today.
Let me ask you, though, just on a couple of those points there. So some of this is similar claims that we saw from Jonathan Chait in a New York Magazine article about a month ago, talking about how things he believed had really started in 1987 on that first visit to what was then the USSR for the president, and that he was targeted at the time as a businessman, but also one who Russians saw as having a large ego, being very fragile, obviously, to the way he's portrayed in the press, and they knew he had money problems.
Right.
It seems so simple, though. Even given all of that, was he really targeted back in the 80s as someone who could eventually, what was it about that profile that tells you this is a person who's going to end up at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue?
Right. Well, initially when they targeted him, I don't think they saw him as a presidential candidate. This was for money laundering, but they gradually groomed him. And you see when he made his first trip to Russia, that was initiated by the Soviets. This is before the fall of the Soviet Union. And the ambassador of the UN, Dubinin, just went up to Trump Tower with his daughter. They invited him to Russia and said, why don't you build the Trump Tower in Moscow? They brought him over there. That trip was booked by Intourist, which was a Soviet tourist agency tied to the KGB. General Kalugin told me he believed Trump had fun with lots of women in 1987 in Russia, and the Soviets had compromise dating back to then. And when Trump came back here, he immediately started to run for president. He took out full-page ads in the New York Times, the Boston Globe, the Washington Post, promoting a foreign policy that is it sounds an awful lot like what the Russians want, wanted then and want now.
Seriously, dude. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that doesn't get on the TV all that often, and it really does need to be talked about because, as I'm showing you, back in 2015, Felix Sater is writing emails to Michael Cohen saying, you know, we can own this election. Putin, I can get them on board. I will manage this whole thing. Let's do it. Let's do it now. And this is between Michael Cohen and Felix Sater. And now they're both cooperating with, the Mueller investigation. Both of them are. Now you've got, Papadopoulos cooperating, Flynn cooperating, Omarosa is, she's got tapes of weird stuff. You got Weisselberg, who is the CFO and has been going back to Fred Trump of the Trump Organization. He's cooperating. I don't know if you remember this, but do you remember when, Trump's got an assistant? Her name's Rona Graff. I wonder if anybody remembers that they all, there was a period in time, I believe in right after the election, where right after Mueller was actually made special counsel, or could have been before. I can't place it exactly in time. But Rona Graff, the House Intelligence Committee, Nunes, wanted to find out what Rona Graff knew because they say everything that Donald Trump does, Rona Graff knows. She knows every phone call he's ever gotten. She knows every check he's ever signed. She knows every meeting he's ever had. Nothing happened without Rona Graff knowing about it. Well, when it came time to go interview Rona Graff, the House Intelligence Committee, Devin Nunes, and also, what's his name? Conway from Texas, okay? They decided that they would go to New York. Almost everybody else had been brought to Washington and taken behind closed doors. I mean, that's how they did Bannon. That's how they did Stone. That's how they, and basically they only would ask, did you collude with the Russians? No. Okay, thanks. That was it. No follow-up questions, no subpoenaed documents, no, requests for documents of any kind, nothing. But when it came time to talk to Rona Graff, they flew to New York. And they wouldn't allow any of the Democrats on the committee to be in that meeting with Rona Graff. So perhaps because they're telling me in the Michael Cohen charging document, they're telling me there's two executives in the Trump Organization that have been given immunity. And we now know that one of them, and I said this yesterday, had to be Weisselman, right? Or Weisselberg, whatever. Heisenberg. Yeah, the Breaking Bad dude. Had to be him. But we don't know who the second one is. So today I was talking to Scotty on the phone. We do a morning rundown on the phone. And I said, well, who's the second person? Who is the second person? And we don't know. But it could be Rona Graff. It could actually be her. Because at first she might have felt protected by the Republicans on the House Intelligence Committee because Nunes views his job not as that he took an oath to uphold the Constitution and make sure all the laws were faithfully executed. No. He thinks he took an oath to Donald Trump. This is a sick bunch. These Republicans have said nothing through this entire debacle of a week. And the walls are closing in on this president. They say, now even Lindsey Graham is going along with, after the election, you can fire Jeff Sessions. Did you hear that yesterday? After the election, you can fire. But this is the same Lindsey Graham that said there would be holy hell to pay if anybody touched a little white hair on little white, Jeff Sessions' head. On his little white head. Oh, you touch a little white hair on that little white head, and there'll be holy hell to pay by all us little white senators. And now all of a sudden he's going, all right. After the election, you can fire him. What? It's really sick. It's really, really, really sick. But maybe the second person is Rona Graff. Maybe she also got a grant of immunity because Mueller was very interested in her. Do you know? I mean, but all I could tell you is everyone's flipping. Everyone's cooperating. You know why? No one around Donald Trump, not a single human being has clean hands. Not one of these people is honest. Not one of these people didn't break a law. Not one of these people isn't. Because why would you? First of all, to enter into a cooperation agreement with the government means that you are facing some criminal charge. That's what it means. You are facing some criminal charge. And so you're willing to exchange information for your freedom. This is just so crazy. This is just so nuts. I can't even tell you. And by the way, you know who else is going to go? You know who else is going to be implicated? I mean, I've said this forever, and I can't wait because this man needs a garbage can beaten. I mean, it's my favorite revenge scene in all of the Godfather revenge scenes. And there's a million of them. I mean, there's all kinds of revenge that's taken in The Godfather. But my very favorite is Carlo, Connie's husband. It's the garbage can beaten. Rudy Giuliani, James Kallstrom, let's not forget about the New York FBI, okay? Let's not forget about the reporting that was done so exquisitely by Wayne Barrett at the Village Voice before he sadly passed away. Let's not forget about what he was uncovering about what was going on in the New York FBI with Rudy. Rudy is just he's covering his own ass. That's why Rudy is willing to lie for the president. Everybody's sitting there scratching their head on various body. Oh, why is Rudy lying for the president? So obviously on TV. I mean, he's debunked every time he opens his mouth. Why? Because he's covering his own behind. He's the next one to enter into an agreement. He's the next one to need immunity.
James Kallstrom was the head of the FBI office in New York for a number of years, and it was a number of years ago. But for many reasons, he has maintained enormous ties with FBI agents, particularly in the New York area. He had a TV show called The FBI Files that was on air until 2006. And he runs a foundation that is called the Marine Corps Law Enforcement Foundation. And it's the Marines that are in any FBI and other federal law enforcement agencies are part of it. So he has a continuing stream of relationships with FBI agents, as does Rudy Giuliani. Rudy Giuliani's law firm, at least the one he's been with for many years, he just left it this year, is Bracewell. It was called Bracewell Giuliani, and they represent the FBI Agent Association of 13,000 members, and Rudy has been intimately tied with that organization for a number of years. So they both have legions of FBI relationships. I want to make it clear, I've known a lot of FBI agents in my life, some of the best people I've ever known. Yeah. They actually invited me to go to Quantico. I spent 2 days there talking to the public corruption agents all across America. And, you know, I think, you know, Joy Reid just said it's a cell. I called it the fifth column within the FBI, and I certainly don't want to disparage the agency itself or the vast majority of agents, but there's some that I think are clearly violating guidelines, if not laws, in open conversations. I do want to go back, Chris, to your prior discussion, because you really have to parse what Brett Barr said on Fox, and because it's just being constantly misrepresented. He did not cite FBI sources.
That's right. Sources close to the investigation or familiar with the investigation. Yes. That's right.
And yes, and if you look at Devlin Barrett's stories in the Wall Street Journal, that big long one, 22 times in one piece, he cited people familiar with the investigation.
Excellent, important point.
Yes. Now, as an investigative reporter, if I can call somebody an FBI source, I do it. If I can call somebody a law enforcement source, I do it. Makes the story stronger. But when you're citing people familiar with the investigation 22 times, we have no idea who is saying what to who. Could be Rudy.
See, this is Wayne Barrett. Wayne Barrett used to write for the Village Voice. He's a great reporter. He's since passed away. This was during the period of time when Hillary Clinton's email investigation was being leaked. You know, that they had an October surprise, big October. I'm talking to some active agents. Rudy Giuliani. Remember that? And I told you, I'll never let that go till it's resolved. So this was Wayne Barrett's reporting about who was talking to the Wall Street Journal, leaking all this information about, Anthony Weiner's computer and blah, blah. It wasn't an agent. Okay? It wasn't an FBI agent. It wasn't Strzok or Page or McCabe or anybody else, because what Wayne Barrett is pointing out there is, as a journalist, if you could say it was an FBI source, you would say it because it makes your story stronger. But he couldn't say that. No one could say that because it wasn't an FBI agent. It was somebody familiar with FBI thinking at the New York FBI field office. And that was probably James Kallstrom or Rudy Giuliani. And it does seem like it was Rudy Giuliani because Rudy Giuliani was on the TV with Martha McCallum and said, we got this big October surprise coming. You'll see. You'll see. And then Lars Larson's show on October 27th, 2016, going, well, I talked to active agents. And of course, they don't want their names public. So it's Rudy, who is leaking to Devlin Barrett, who writes for the Wall Street Journal, that there was more, and they were sitting on a computer, Anthony Weiner's computer, and they were going to sit on it, and then dump it on Comey with 11 days to go, so that Comey would have to write a report to Congress telling them, okay, I got this computer, I have to look. And of course, there was nothing on it, but it was 2 days before the election that he was able to say there was nothing on it, but it was too late. Plus, all this Russian interference on social media, and now we know, and this is why you have David Pecker taking an immunity.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
The truth matters. That's what we sell to our audience, because that's the only reason we have a job. The truth is, he lied about this. You guys should own it
about what?
and move forward.
I'm sorry, lied about what? I'm not going to sit here and listen to that.
About what Michael Cohen was doing with these women and the payments.
No,
he
the
lied
president
about
said he
not
knew about
knowing.
it after
I know, and that's
the
a lie.
payments were made.
That's
Says
a
who,
lie.
you?
Yes.
Says you have.
Me.
Why?
Says the
Why?
facts.
No,
I'll
what
tell you
facts?
Because I heard a
the
tape,
president said,
and on it his voice is Donald Trump, and he is listening to his lawyer tell him what he needs to do to finish his deal with his friend Pecker. Everybody's heard it. If you want it, I'll play it again.
No,
what does that
CNN
tell
plays
us?
it on a going
Well,
loop.
good. Then you've heard this. So really, I'm just refreshing your recollection. So then you know it already. You know it already.
No.
And what it shows is he was aware of what he was doing before he did it.
No.
That's the truth. He's lying.
When he was asked on Air Force One, did you know about that? Was a question about the Stormy Daniels payment, and he said no.
And he did.
And meaning not at the time. That was in April. The whole world knew about it by January.
No, he knew about it also.
No, he's saying he didn't know about it at the time, and he said yesterday.
I know,
it was
and that's
aired
not
this morning.
true.
He said he knew about it after the fact.
I know,
but
that's not true.
I don't want your viewers to, and I know your viewers expect to be fed anti-Trump virulence every single night, and they come away quite satisfied. And let's be fair here. That's true. You should just own it. Just say,
you want me to own that? You
won't
own what is so obvious, and I don't get
here's
it.
What's obvious.
You could say, look, did he lie? Yes, he lied. He's not perfect, but it's not illegal. You could say that. His own lawyer admits he lied.
No. That's not. Is he his current lawyer? Jay Goldberg, when was the last time he was his... No, answer for me. When was the last time he was his lawyer?
I would argue when he called to ask how to handle Michael Cohen just months ago.
No, when, you know who his lawyers are now, right?
Yes.
Rudy Giuliani, Jay Sekulow. Well, you're going to have that conversation.
Oh, I don't
with
think
them.
that just because you're not retained currently doesn't mean you're not a good gauge of the character of your client.
Let me tell you something.
Yes.
Okay. The president spoke on this just this morning for the whole world to see.
Yeah.
He said, she asked him, did you know about the payments? He said, I knew them after they were made. But let's focus on the two big stories of the week, according to CNN and MSNBC, Manafort and Cohen. Let's focus on those. Where in the Manafort trial is Russia, collusion, Trump?
I don't care.
The
president lied about what he knew about these women. He should not lie to the American people.
You know, she's just never, ever, ever going to cop to the fact that she represents a man who is completely criminal. She's never going to cop to the fact that he lies. This went on and on and on last night. It was off the hook. It was just so bizarre to watch. A woman twist herself into various positions of the Kama Sutra just to protect a liar, a lying, scheming, disgusting, misogynistic, mobbed up piece of dung that is the president of the United States. And listen, okay, the Michael Cohen tape that we all heard, that was recorded in September of 2016. The payments were made in October of 2016. The president was asked last April on Air Force One if he knew about the payments. He said no. He lied. He just lied. And all that Chris was trying to get out of her is just tell me that you know that the president of the United States was recorded in September of 2016 by Michael Cohen. And you know why I think Michael Cohen recorded this? Michael Cohen didn't record this with an eye towards, popping the president. He either used his phone as note-taking, and some people do that, or he did it because he didn't feel confident that he would ever get paid back because Donald Trump is famous for stiffing law firms and lawyers. He's famous for it. He never pays his bill. Rudy Giuliani's current law firm, I mean, he's been with so many, but he's not with Bracewell Giuliani anymore. Now he's with, they let him go. He was with Greenberg Traurig, which is, one of the biggest freaking lobby shops in the history of the world. I have personal experience. I live with the experience. And Donald Trump didn't pay them either. And I really believe Michael Cohen felt that he would not be reimbursed for all this money. It was over $200,000 he was laying out to pay off these women. And so he recorded it, either for that reason or because he keeps notes that way. But he didn't do it to, blackmail Trump. He didn't do it because he's a rat. He did it because I think he didn't believe he would ever get, see the money. And that is why he went to the Wall Street Journal in the first place, Michael Cohen, because Donald Trump didn't pay him back. So, besides for that, I mean, what does Manafort have to do with Russia? All right, let's go to the way, way back relationship between Donald Trump, Roger Stone, and Paul Manafort. Remember the law firm Manafort, Black, Manafort, and Stone? The Manafort and Stone is Manafort and Stone. Charlie Black is the Black. I don't know where he is. But Paul Manafort is the Manafort and Roger Stone is the Stone. And guess who one of their first clients was? Donald Trump. This idea that they didn't know each other, through this money laundering, this mobbed up period of time, that's bullcrap. That's made up out of whole cloth. Of course they knew each other. Oh, I feel so bad for Paul Manafort. He's such a good guy. Good guys do not represent Ukrainian dictators who are loyal to Vladimir Putin, steal all the money from the Ukrainian people, all the money. I mean, $118 billion out of a country whose GDP is $181 billion. I mean, they stole all the money. Yanukovych is one of the most despised people in Ukraine, okay? He fled. He had to leave. His people were so livid that he fled back to his beloved Vladimir Putin's Russia. And there was a woman who was trying to dethrone him who needed, Manafort devised a media plan. What was her name? Yulia. She was running against Yanukovych. And Manafort created a media plan in Ukraine to smear her. Also, what did Manafort sell? What was it that Manafort sold to guys like Oleg Deripaska? I have always told you that this started a long time ago, that I believe what Paul Manafort sold to the Russians was a media plan, a media operation, the same kind of black ops media operation that he sold to Viktor Yanukovych as his lobbyist. Okay? Black ops. placed articles in various, publications, everything from the Wall Street Journal here in the United States to bullcrap websites here in the United States to the National Enquirer. Last night, MSNBC got real close to understanding this connection, except they didn't tie it up in one big bow about how Paul Manafort probably, and we'll find out in the next trial. We'll find out in the next trial that what Paul Manafort sold to Russia, to Oleg Deripaska, which is what would explain Paul Manafort's emails to Oleg Deripaska saying, and also Felix Sater going, we want to send tapes over to Russia to show how glowingly Donald Trump talks about Vladimir Putin. We want to do that because then Vladimir Putin can endorse Donald Trump and they can build their Trump Tower in Moscow, and Donald Trump can become the president of the United States because the U.S.'s number one enemy, if they see Donald Trump as a guy who wants to, fix the relationship with Russia, and Vladimir Putin is saying, Donald Trump is so savvy, such a good negotiator, he's so smart, he's so this, he's so that, well, that will win votes in the United States. And that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what we saw happen. So last night, they started talking about, the National Enquirer and how all the pages on the National Enquirer, the one after the other was BS stories about Hillary Clinton. Well, I got news for you. This was the same black ops operation that Manafort conducted in Ukraine from 2011 to 2013. And Manafort's writing letters to Oleg Deripaska going, well, now that Donald Trump is running for president, we're doing the same plan. So don't you see how glowingly he's talking about Vladimir Putin? Don't you see? Can we use this to make me whole? Because Oleg Deripaska was suing Manafort for not deploying the black ops operation that he had conducted in Ukraine against Yulia, who was running against Viktor Yanukovych, in the United States to help Donald Trump. What was her name? Yulia Tymoshenko. She was a really pretty blonde girl. She had braids on the top of her head. Do you remember her? She was put on trial in Ukraine based on Paul Manafort's BS news operation against her. She was arrested and she was put on trial. And Paul Manafort, masterminded this whole thing. He rewrote Wikipedia entries to smear her. He set up a fake think tank in Vienna to disseminate viewpoints supporting Viktor Yanukovych. He did a social media blitz aimed at targeting the European audience and some people here in the United States to turn us against her because she was running against Yanukovych. And he started briefing journalists on Breitbart, at Breitbart, the right-wing website, and this was Bannon's thing, right? And then they started attacking Hillary Clinton here in the United States during this particular campaign. And it was the same deployment of the same black ops media strategy that Yanukovych, that Paul Manafort deployed against Yulia Tymoshenko in Ukraine. Paul Manafort was saying to Deripaska, we'll do it here in the United States, and and stop suing me. I can't, for $10 million. Stop suing me because I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. A digital roadmap is what it was called. A digital roadmap. It was a confidential 6-page document, and it was called a digital roadmap, and it laid out the whole plan. The plan to deconstruct Yulia Tymoshenko via videos and articles and social media. And they did it here with Hillary Clinton. This is what Manafort, sold. And I mean, you have Donald Trump standing on a stage saying things like, the National Enquirer ought to win a Pulitzer Prize. Because they were planting stories in there.
There was a picture on the front page of the National Enquirer, which does have credibility. And on the cover of the National Enquirer, there was a picture of him and crazy Lee Harvey Oswald having breakfast. This was a magazine that, frankly, in many respects, should be very respected. I mean, if that was the New York Times, they would have gotten Pulitzer Prizes for their reporting. I've always said, why didn't the National Enquirer get the Pulitzer Prize?
Really? That is part of the media plan. What the National Enquirer did for Donald Trump to suppress stories and against Hillary Clinton. It is the Paul Manafort digital roadmap. It included videos, articles, use of social media, all of these things, okay? All of these things that was successfully deployed against Yanukovych's challenger. The National Enquirer did to Ted Cruz. What he's talking about there is that this stupid rumor that Ted Cruz's father was friends with Lee Harvey Oswald. That was during the primary. During the election, the general election, the National Enquirer then turned its focus on Hillary Clinton.
In July, they've got their, the main story there obviously is their bread and butter, mean celebrity exploitation stuff, dying share, broken alone.
Okay.
But then you see on the side, hey, some politics. There's Trump. How I will save America from terror. Following week, this is very subtle, Hillary Clinton, corrupt, on the take, fraud and bribes, crooked Hillary. Where have I heard that phrase, crooked Hillary, before? 2 weeks later, Hillary failed secret FBI lie detector, new email scandal, bombshell, damning report inside the shocking bribe. Here's August 15th, 2016. Donald Trump's revenge on Hillary and her puppets. Who are her puppets? Barack Obama is apparently one of her puppets. That's interesting. Mob connections, shady billion-dollar deals, gay double life. It's a little weird how they put the mob connections bullet point right under Donald Trump on this cover, but I'm quite sure from the context they mean to imply that the mob stuff and the gay stuff and the shady billion-dollar deals, those are all things you're supposed to attribute to Hillary Clinton. Here's the following week. Again, very subtle. Clinton's secret health crisis, mental breakdown, eating herself to death. And Bill Clinton has Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. By mid-September, the National Enquirer reports that it has obtained Hillary Clinton's full medical file. They also found that nice picture of her to accompany that headline. In her medical file, according to the National Enquirer, there's news of her violent rages, her liver damage from booze, 3 strokes, and also Alzheimer's. Then down at the bottom, not sure if this is directly derived from the medical file, but Jail Clinton Now. It's also there on the front page. Right before the election, this was the National Enquirer's Halloween special. Explosive story that will change the election. 24 years of cover-ups and crimes exposed. Hillary hitman tells all. Smoking gun proof that Hillary paid hush money to hookers.
Oh, my God.
Wait, hush money? Who now? Who now did that? This was the following week, part 2 of Clinton's hitman explosive tell-all. Hillary hooked on narcotics. Also, gay sex sting. Something involving Hillary being gay in a motel.
Again.
Hillary blackmailed the FBI. Not blackmailed by the FBI, but she blackmailed the FBI. That's a number. Then there was their election special. This was their masterpiece. This was on the newsstands in basically every grocery store in America when Americans went to the polls for Election Day. They really boiled it down for the final push. Hillary, corrupt, racist, criminal. Look at the middle section on the bottom there. Hillary uses the N-word and hates black people.
Wow.
That's in every grocery store in America, right? And even if you don't buy it, that's the cover.
Right. That's what you saw as you were checking out what you're milking your eggs over there. Seriously, dude. I got to tell you, the office in Kiev, managed by this guy named Kalimnik, who was partners with Manafort, the FBI believes that his office manager in Kiev, yes, Manafort had an office in Kiev all this time, that he, Kalimnik, is part of the Russian intelligence GRU spy agency. Rick Gates was aware of all this media manipulation that was going on at the time, and it included the same tactics they used in Ukraine against Yulia Tymoshenko when Yanukovych was running. They deployed it here in the United States using Bannon's Breitbart, using fake websites, using obviously the Enquirer, and that's why the Enquirer needs to have an immunity deal. It's a Russian operation.
The Randi Rhodes. The Randi Rhodes Show is live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
He mentioned pardoning Manafort, and then you have Michael Cohen's attorney, Lanny Davis.
He did mention pardoning Manafort.
He did, and said that he would consider that. I think he feels bad for Manafort. They were friends. He didn't work for him for very long. Worked for him for basically 100 days. The president didn't know about all of this tax stuff. Of course, he wouldn't know about that. It was. Yeah. And he did say, he said, keep in mind, he worked for Reagan for a long time.
Worked for a lot of people.
And no one's talking about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Keep in mind that Manafort, Black and Stone is Paul Manafort, Charlie Black, and Roger Stone. And that one of their first clients was Donald Trump. He didn't work for him for 100 days. This is all bull. This is all garbage. This is all made up. This is all a faux news, a propaganda channel. I mean, this thing is just so bizarre. How they just sit there and here you have the president literally considering a pardon for Manafort. Everybody in his administration tell him, don't do it. Don't do it. It's obstruction of justice. Don't do it. Don't do it over here. But he wants to. He wants to do it because this next trial is going to expose everything Paul Manafort did to launder money and all the different jobs that he pulled off, all the different scams that he ran. And one of them is this media operation. This media operation that he did on behalf of Russian interests like Oleg Deripaska, who's an oligarch, an aluminum magnate, a big oligarch in Russia, and how he was using Breitbart, and how he was using the Inquirer, and how he was using social media, and how he and Michael Cohen, for God's sake, buried in this charging document is a $50,000 payment to some tech company, some internet firm. We don't even know what that is yet. It's all connected. It's all connected, and it's all about running a Russian operation to get Donald Trump to be the president of the United States, so Vladimir Putin could have a chance at rebuilding the old Soviet Union without any interference from the United States of America, who would then act on his behest, dismantle NATO. Let him have his way in Syria so he could kill millions of people in Syria, hundreds of thousands of people in Syria so he could have a port in the Middle East. Because he's a petrol king, right? That's all that they have there. I mean, it's just so sick. But you've got Breitbart articles criticizing Clinton for her public support for Yulia Tymoshenko, right? Now, why? Why would they go back that far? Because they're idiots. They're idiots. And Manafort leaves all these little breadcrumbs. I mean, they cite a Jewish leader who accused Clinton anonymously of creating a neo-Nazi Frankenstein. This is what was written by Rick Gates, okay? Rick Gates, gentlemen, here is the first part of a series of articles that will be coming as we continue to build this effort. Alan, you get full credit for the Frankenstein comment. I don't know who that is. And then you've got $75 million worth of offshore accounts. $75 million of concealed money. Paul Manafort, this is what we're going to find. And I mean, it's just unbelievable. And all this money, all this gravy train that he had going in Ukraine, it came to an end in October 2013 because Yanukovych fled back to Moscow. So from 13 to 16, Manafort didn't have any income. And so he created this deal with Oleg Deripaska to do the media campaign that he did on Yulia here against Hillary. And then Deripaska was like real pissed off because he didn't see anything happening. And he started suing him in the Cayman Islands, for God's sake. And Manafort's writing, well, don't you see all this stuff, all these articles? Don't you see? I'm doing it. It's getting done. How do I use this to make me whole? How do I do that? Why won't you see this? as being a fulfillment of the contract for the media plan here in the United States to get Trump elected. I'm doing it. And Trump feels bad for Manafort. He feels bad. You know why he feels bad? Because Donald Trump is a gangster. And Donald Trump only respects the oath of a muerta. And Manafort hasn't cooperated yet. And so he's like, Manafort is, he's one of the old-time gangsters. He doesn't cooperate. He doesn't sell people out. He doesn't, give testimony. He'll go to jail for me. He'll die in jail. He'll be Paulie. Paulie Manafort. Paulie Walnuts. It's the same guy. It's all connected. Jerry in Baltimore.
Hey, Randy. Thanks for taking my call.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I was wondering if Trump fires Sessions after the midterms and the Dems have at least taken the House, if maybe taking the Senate too by 1 or 2 seats, wouldn't that leave Rosenstein as the Attorney General? And couldn't he then let Mueller investigate Sessions for his part in the Russia conspiracy?
Okay, that's a lot to unpack. So here's the answer. Yes, if Sessions is fired by statute, Rod Rosenstein, the number 2 right now at the Justice Department, would automatically take his place. If the Democrats took the Senate, they would then be able to confirm or not confirm anybody that Donald Trump nominates for Attorney General.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and now what's the next question after that?
Wouldn't Rosenstein be free to let Mueller fully investigate Sessions' part in the Russian conspiracy?
Well, Mueller is free to do that now.
Okay.
I mean, who's to say he's not?
Well,
I mean, Sessions obviously recused. I'm sorry.
I said it just seems further away from Sessions and just closer to Trump. But you might be right.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, Sessions recused himself because he had a private meeting that he never disclosed during his confirmation hearing with Kislyak. He had a private meeting in his Senate office, and he lied about that. So what's to say Mueller isn't looking into that right now? Why does he need any change at Justice in order to do that?
Well, it would seem that Sessions would hear about it if they were getting closer to him, I would think. But
no, because Sessions. No, check this out. Sessions is not controlling Mueller or getting reports from Mueller. Rosenstein is. Because Sessions recused himself, he is not entitled to, probably not receiving any information about what Mueller is doing. Rosenstein oversees the Mueller investigation on behalf of DOJ. So Sessions isn't being briefed. So Mueller could very well be interviewing people who have knowledge of whether or not Sessions lied under oath. You know, he could be tacking on Sessions to his things to investigate without anything having to change at DOJ. So,
or like you say, he could already have a sealed indictment for him and been beyond that.
He could. He absolutely could. So we don't need anything to happen for Mueller to investigate Sessions. And maybe he already has, and maybe he just, thinks that Sessions was, a dupe or whatever. I don't know, but I will tell you, Sessions, this goes way back, okay, to Northern Virginia, when Sessions was the first senator to come on board. By the way, the entire Trump caucus in the House, they're all gone or under investigation. I mean, you only had 5 members of Congress total endorsing Donald Trump. The first one was Chris Collins. The second one was Duncan Hunter. And we all know what happened this week to those two, right?
Yep.
The third one was DeJarlis from Tennessee, who, was porking his mistress. He's an anti-abortion zealot, and his mistress, he forced her to have an abortion. So
didn't he resign?
Not yet. No.
Okay.
No, he's still there. And then the other one is Tom Marino, who was able to get a law passed to call off the DEA from investigating Big Pharma and oxycodone, right? It was on 60 Minutes. It was a big report about how Tom Marino was going to be our drug czar. And the only reason why he's not our drug czar is because he got popped passing legislation to protect Purdue Pharma, the manufacturer of Oxy, from being investigated by DEA. So that's the entire Trump caucus. The other person was one lone senator, and that's Jeff Sessions. So Jeff Sessions was put in charge of the foreign policy shop early in the Trump campaign. Jeff Sessions is the person who brought in Papadopoulos. He is the person who brought in Carter Page. He is the person who brought in Rick Dearborn, his chief of staff. All this entire foreign policy shop that's either pled guilty or is, trying to cooperate with the Mueller investigation, they were all given their jobs by Jeff Sessions.
Mm-hmm. Is Rosenstein the only clean person in the Trump administration?
I don't know if he's clean. I don't know if McGahn is. I doubt it. I don't know if, I have no idea. I know Hope Hicks lied. I know, Rob Portman was a wife beater. I mean, these are the peripheral people. We know Omarosa is, just an opportunist. So I don't know what Rosenstein is yet.
Have you seen that video of the black snake eating the orange snake on YouTube yet? That's Omarosa.
Yes, it is. It's the cobra meeting the python. Yes, and
there you go.
Yeah, that's exactly what this is. And you know what's really creepy? And just as an aside, you remember how Trump, when he was campaigning, he used to read that the snake poem all the time?
Oh, remind me, please.
So he used to read this poem about, a woman who took in a snake. And the snake finally, at the very end of all her loving care and her attention to bringing this sick snake back to health, the snake gets healthy and the snake bites her and kills her. And
Go ahead, continue.
I was just going to say, and the moral of the story is, but oh, dear woman, you knew before you took me in that I was a snake. Now, that is some world heavyweight champion projection on the part of Donald Trump, as is every allegation he's made against Hillary Clinton. Everything from Hillary Clinton being mobbed up, to Hillary Clinton being a pedophile, to Hillary Clinton being bought by the Russians, to Hillary Clinton, being on opioids or on drugs or whatever. I mean, this is really some projection that's going on here. And this is the Roy Cohn playbook. Roy Cohn always said, if somebody attacks you in a sensational headline, put out a sensational headline about them. And that's what's gone on here.
Could Hillary sue Pecker for slander and bankrupt his empire?
I don't know. Well, his empire is near bankruptcy anyway. Another thing you're going to find out as this progresses is that David Pecker's AMI was near bankruptcy.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
You also aren't surprised by this AP report that there was a safe with secrets about the now president of the United States and presumably about other celebrities as well.
A lot of the employees at the Inquirer knew about this safe. Some of the documents, like that arrangement with the doorman that I just mentioned, actually resided in that safe for a while. It was a physical old safe that was just in someone's office there.
It's almost cliche. I mean, I was joking with Allison that if she wrote about this, no one would believe her. There's an old safe where they kept stuff?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Oh, my God. It's such a sick story. And, of course, it ties into the whole media plan that I believe Paul Manafort sold to the Russians for Viktor Yanukovych's election and again for Hillary Clinton's election. I got to tell you, and listen, they all thought that they would get away with it. This is the craziest part. And it's not really that insane for them to think that they could get away with all this if they weren't running for the presidency, right? They could have gotten away with it, and they probably would have paid, fines for tax fraud or fines for, being mobbed up and violating the Bank Secrecy Act like Trump did in Atlantic City 106 times. 106 times he was caught laundering money. That's what the Bank Secrecy Act is, that he was caught laundering money for Russian mobsters in Atlantic City 106 times over here. The National Enquirer also, like Trump in Atlantic City, needed money. They were going broke. They're still going broke, right? And so David Peckerhead's talking to Donald Trump, and he's like, don't worry, I can get you a cash infusion. Just do this over here. Do what Manafort wants you to do. Use the National Enquirer to plant sick and twisted stories about Hillary being gay, which, the only one who should care is, Bill. Somehow I really doubt that horn dog married a gay woman. It just doesn't fit. But anyway, who cares? And Hillary's dying, and Hillary's on drugs, and Hillary's a pedophile, and Hillary is running a pedophile ring. All this was in the National Enquirer over and over and over again. Meanwhile, they have a safe in the National Enquirer where they're putting stories that were given to them by doormen at Trump Tower. This is a real story. There was a doorman at Trump Tower who sold a story to the National Enquirer for $30,000. The doorman did. He said that he had proof that Donald Trump fathered a child, not with Melania, but with another girl, another woman, and that this kid is like a teenager now. And the Enquirer bought that story. Whether it's true or not, I have no idea. But it's so interesting because they said, Obama's got an illegal child, right? Bill Clinton's got a black baby somewhere in Arkansas. So it's just so interesting. It's just so interesting that they always attack on the things that they are terrified will come out about them, true or not. True or not. So this doorman was paid $30,000. They did buy his story. Why would they buy a story if it was fake? Right? And they put it in the safe along with the Karen McDougal story. Put it in the safe along with the Stormy Daniels story. Put it in the safe. The National Enquirer was a campaign arm of the Trump campaign and didn't declare any of its activities on behalf of, like if you do an in-kind contribution, you have to declare it. You have to say that your company did it. Just like, Donald Trump sat there with Ainsley Airhead and admitted that he had committed a felony because he never declared the payment he made to Michael Cohen. Of course, he knew about it because that tape of Michael Cohen and Trump talking about making a payment is from September of 2016. So, of course, he knew. And, of course, he's been lying about it ever since because there's tape. And the National Enquirer did the same thing. And, obviously this was part of Manafort's media plan. But they, of course, could have gotten away with it. Manafort got away with it in Ukraine for how many years? Okay, he laundered $75 million, or at least offshored $75 million worth of ill-gotten goods, gains, right? I mean, Trump obviously 106 times violated the Bank Secrecy Act. That's laundering money. Obviously he paid fines, when he was still with his dad for, not renting to black people or showing African Americans apartments. Obviously he's been to Russia a million times. Obviously he met with all the oligarchs in Russia who were buying apartments in Trump Tower for the longest time, the last time Trump built anything. Obviously, Felix Sater was embedded in the Trump organization, as a representative of Bayrock to launder more Russian money through shell companies into other Trump projects like Trump Soho down here in Florida, Trump Sunny Isles. These things have gone bankrupt also, right? And I mean, it's just so unbelievable. Of course, this is current, and of course, they're all connected, and of course, this is going to get exposed, but they would never, ever have faced jail time, just fines for the crimes that they commit. That is the way our system is set up, okay? Few people like Michael Cohen or Paul Manafort or Donald Trump, the guys that have the wealth, the guys that have the status, the guys that have the congressmen in their back pocket. You think Trump ever gave up the people he had in his back pocket? Really? Do you think so? Because I don't. They're never convicted of anything. They violate all kinds of laws, campaign finance, money laundering, tax evasion, and all they ever get is fined. That is the way our justice system is set up. It rewards the corruption of the wealthy and the politically connected. Whether your name is Donald Trump, Bob McDonnell, it doesn't matter, right? They get cover. Whether your financial institution is responsible for an economic calamity that turned millions of Americans out of their houses, or credit rating agencies that rated garbage, AAA, nothing ever happens to those people. Nothing. The consumers, who got killed because they thought that this was a AAA rated, thing to buy, who did do their due diligence, who did do their homework. Like me, I thought, these mortgages were the most secure investments you could make. That's where I put my money. Not all of it, but good chunk of 60% of everything that I had. I invested in mortgage-backed securities. Why? Because I was raised in a world where my dad told me that people always pay their mortgage. It's the first thing people pay. They never want to lose their house. But they were AAA rated, and they were garbage. The credit rating agencies, did anything ever happen to them? No. The banks that caused this calamity, did anybody ever get frog-marched and sent to jail? No. Donald Trump violates freaking money laundering laws. Does he go to jail? No. He stiffs everybody that did work for him. Does he go to jail? No. That's the way our justice system is set up. That's the corporate court we have. It sets up legal bribery, a legal ability to buy your way out of jail. You got banks that pay $9 billion in fines, but what is $9 billion when you made $85 billion? I mean, just keep the dollars small so you can understand. I'm facing jail, right, because I stole $35. You offer me a chance to pay back $9, I'm going to do it. That's what they're doing. $35, $9, you're out. That's not really available to you. If you stole $35 from a convenience store, you're going to freaking jail. Nobody's going to give you the opportunity to pay back $9 and never go to jail, never see the inside of a courtroom. Nobody's going to sit there with you and say, sign off on this piece of paper, give me $9, and you don't have to face any charges for stealing $35 from the convenience store. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. The list of criminal associates connected to Donald Trump is so long that his own name is on that list. His son, his daughter, both his sons. Because now New York State, well, not now, but Barbara Underwood, who took over after Eric Schneiderman was forced to resign, she is now bringing. She has gone after the Trump Foundation. So interesting that Trump attacked the Clinton Foundation, and there's no wrongdoing there. But the Trump Foundation doesn't even have a board of directors, which it's required to have under charitable law. It literally, raised money for wounded warriors or for veterans groups and didn't give the money to them. The money that they did give to them, they used as campaign events in Iowa, and they would present these big, giant checks that said the Trump Foundation on those checks, those big, giant show checks like Publishers Clearinghouse size checks. They would give those checks in Iowa at campaign rallies. You can't do that. You can't do that and be a charity. Can you imagine if the Clinton Foundation was handing out money to people, in Iowa? I mean, it's just ridiculous. And you saw it. It was right there in front of your face. Like I said, it's all out in the open. Just nobody wants to connect these dots for you the way that I do. And I don't really understand what that's about. But you got every single person getting an email or being, or writing an email. Hey, Russia's got this. Russia wants to meet with you. Russia supports you. Russia wants to give you dirt on Hillary Clinton. You got Rick Gates. You got, he's writing to Oleg Deripaska. You got Manafort writing to Oleg Deripaska. Don't you see? I'm doing the media plan. Can't you see these articles? How do I use this to make me whole? You got George Papadopoulos, who Jeff Sessions hired. You got Carter Page with a FISA warrant, who Jeff Sessions hired. You got Jeff Sessions himself having to recuse himself. You got Michael Flynn pleading guilty. You got Cohen cooperating now. You got the CFO of the Trump Organization cooperating now. You got David Pecker at at AMI. They were almost broke. You know what he was promised, by the way? He was promised Saudi money. He was promised a meeting with the new Saudi, family, the royal family. And he got that meeting, by the way. That did happen. David Pecker. Dylan Howard, the chief content officer for the Inquirer. God only knows what Rona Graff testified to because the Democrats were not allowed to even attend. But I got news for you. The Democrats are loaded for bear. If anything happens to Robert Mueller, I'm telling you, the big fear is that, in 24 hours of firing Mueller, documents will get destroyed. I hope that sent a chill down your spine as you approach the weekend, okay? But of top concern to every single person who cares about justice, I don't care what side of the aisle you're on, is that if Mueller is fired, they would start destroying documents. His team would immediately be disbanded, okay? And so I just want you to know that there are contingency plans right away. The Democrats, they would demand instantly a floor vote to retroactively protect the documents, to retroactively protect Robert Mueller. It would happen in both the Senate and the House. The Democrats have a contact list of Republicans that they've identified as that being a bridge too far. And those Republicans have signaled privately that they would be willing to act if Trump pulled the Mueller trigger. So that's what would happen immediately. Also, I just want you to know, groups like Move On, groups like Indivisible, that is who I would put everybody. We would all be in touch with those, at least those two groups. There would be instantly rallies in the street. Okay, and let me tell you how it works. This is how planned out it really is. If Mueller was fired before 2:00 in the afternoon on any given day, the protests would start at 5:00. If Mueller is fired on a Friday night or, after 5:00, the protests are set for noon the following day. And trust me, sign up for Indivisible, sign up for those alerts or moveon.org for the alerts because they already have been organizing. There are 933 rallies so far with locations already picked out. They already have sponsors enlisted to help them with the logistics, okay? So there'll be rallies all over this country. In North Dakota, believe it or not, Bismarck has one. Gila, Hawaii. Oh, God save Gila, Hawaii. They're getting slammed. That hurricane is just unbelievable. But LA's got one. New York's got. I mean, there's more than 350,000 people like me who've already RSVP'd online that we would show up, that we would attend. Within minutes of a Mueller firing, dozens of Republicans would voice opposition publicly. Dozens of them. The ones that don't want to put their name on it, they would privately call Flynn. What's his name? Kelly. They would privately call Kelly. They would privately call, everybody around the president. They would pull the trigger. There are documents that have been drawn up for any number of contingencies, including the firing of Rosenstein, Saturday Night Massacre kind of a thing. Within hours, things would start to happen. You will see. Things would start moving. Things would start, being introduced on the Senate floor. A retroactive bill to protect Mueller, a retroactive bill to protect his document, all these things, so that you would have people from DOJ securing his office, securing his documents, securing his personnel, allowing him to actually sue, allowing him to, take his documents with him if he needed to. All kinds of things are already. So I just want you to know, it's not like, we're just sitting here watching. People who give a damn, like me, people who like you, who really want to know what's going to happen, it's knowable. You can know. Now, while I tell you that, the news on the TV is okay, and that people like, the news, like CNN doesn't lie to you. I could tell you that. They don't lie to you. MSNBC doesn't lie to you. They just don't connect the dots as often as they should. They need to correct that because this is a serious criminal enterprise that is being operated in parts of the House, parts of the Senate, and the entire executive branch, or I shouldn't say it that way, the entire White House. Have a good weekend. Buy a stinking podcast, that too.